So now let's compile this and see what happens. Okay, now we're good. So now let's go ahead and create the program that's going to test this class or use this class. Because over here it says write a program that demonstrates the class. The program should ask the user to enter a temperature. So let's create that new program. I'll go ahead and I'll create a class for that program, public class, and I'll call this program freeze or boil test. And then I'll go ahead and I'll create a public. The main method. It's a public static void main. All right. So this is the program that's going to test this class, right? This on its own is not a complete program. It's just a class. It doesn't have a main method. It's just a class that someone can use. So it's not a complete program, but another program can use this class. Now, as long as you save this program where the class is, when you try to use that class, they should be able to find each other, and then they wouldn't complain. Because they can see each other in the same location, there wouldn't be any problem. But if you try to save it somewhere else, then you'd have to specify the location where that class is before you can use it. But because they're in the same location, because I'm going to save this file in the same location, they shouldn't have any problem while working with each other. So the first thing I'm going to do over here, it says that. Now let me go ahead and make a copy of the question here, just so we can see it on the other page as well. So paste this here. All right. So the first thing it says over here, after that, it says after the question, it says write a program. After the main question, write a program that demonstrates the class. The program should ask the user to enter a temperature. So we know we're going to be using some kind of feature to ask the user for user inputs, right? So let's use a scanner for this one. So in order to use a scanner to accept user input, we need to import it so the program can have access to it. Now you can go ahead and use the G-option pane if you want. I'm just choosing to use a scanner. Okay, so to use a scanner, you have to import it so this program can have access to it. So I'm going to go ahead and import the java.util, the scanner class in the java.util package. Now with the scanner class, we have to go ahead and create an object. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, create an object scanner. I'll create a class type variable called scanner, create a new scanner object in memory, pass in the system, pass in the system.in method, which is basically going to accept byte info from the keyboard, and then I'm going to now connect, or basically send with this equal sign, the memory address of this object to this kind of class type variable. Okay, now I can use this scanner object, or this variable that references the scanner object, to ask for input. So it says we should ask the user to enter a temperature. So let's do that with a system.out.println statement. And we are going to ask the user to please enter a temperature. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and call this, use the scanner object to call scanner.next double. Now this scanner.next double is going to pop up some kind of text box, and it's going to allow the user to enter a value, right? Now whatever the user types is going to be converted to a double and then returned. Now when it's returned, we need a place to store it. So I'm going to go ahead and create a variable here. I'm going to call it, it's going to be a double, right? So I'm going to call it user temperature, because that value is going to be a double. The user is likely to type in a double. Even if they type in an integer, that integer is going to be converted to a double and returned. So I'm going to declare a variable as a double, and then I'll call my typing is bad, and then I'll call this user temperature. And then once I'm able to get what the user has typed, okay, which is being returned as a double, I'm going to store it in user temperature like this. And then Now I have the user temperature, so I can use it with my class. Let's just go ahead and save this for now, and then just so we're fine. So I'm going to save it in the same location where my class is, because I'm going to use my class, right? So I'm going to save it in the same location so that it can easily find it. Like I said, you can save it elsewhere, but you have to specify the path of where it is and all that stuff. But if you save it in the same location, you're fine. They should be able to see each other and work with each other. So I'm going to save this as a freeze or boil test.java in the same location. And we don't have any errors when we compile it. So let's continue. Now we have the user temperature. Let's go ahead and create a freeze or boil object. Right, so in order to create a freeze or boil object, I'm going to call the freeze or boil, and then I'll create a class type variable, call it temperature. I should have called this class probably temperature or something, but let's call this temperature 1. Okay, now when you try to do something like this, it's the same as trying to create a variable, an integer variable called, let's say, number. This is a type and this is the name of the variable. When Java sees this and sees this, it's going to realize that you're trying to create a variable, some kind of a variable, but it's also going to see that this freeze or boil is not one of the primitive data types, like an integer or a double or a character. It will see that it's not one of those. So realize that, okay, you're trying to create an object from this class. So it's going to look in that same location where your test program is saved to see if it can find a freeze or boil class. Okay, then it's going to see it if it's there. If not, you're going to have an error. If it sees it, it's going to say, okay, you're trying to reserve this as an object or as a class type variable to store a freeze or boil object, right? So now it's just reserved, but I'm now going to go ahead and create a new freeze or boil object in memory, and I'm passing in the memory location to temperature 1. But before that, the freeze or boil, we define the constructor to accept the temperature given. So let's go ahead and initialize automatically. Initially, as soon as we create an object, let's go ahead and initialize it with a value. The temperature, let's set it to, let's say, 21, just to use the example they gave in the program here. Minus 20. So when this object's temperature 1 is created, it's going to have its temperature field set to minus 20, right? And let me delete this. So now we can call some of the methods in there. We can even call the get, the accessor, just to see if it's indeed its temperature field has indeed been set to negative 20. So system.out.println the value of the temperature value of temperature 1. So temperature 1 dot get. We name the accessor as get temperature, right? So temperature 1 dot get temperature. Now we're just testing to see if it displays the value of the temperature field of this temperature 1 object. So let's go ahead and compile this, run this, and we should expect to see negative. Now, although it's asking us this, it's not really going to do anything with it for now. It's just going to, set this to negative 20, and then allow us to see it. So let's just type in anything for now. Double for now. Hit OK, and we can see we have negative 20. We don't really want to set negative 20. We want to set the temperature to the user temperature. We just accept it here, actually. So that's what we should do. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the user temperature and paste it in as an argument for the temperature field. And if I compile this now and we ask the user to enter something, and I enter, let's say, 78, and hit enter, now we expect to see 78, because that's the temperature field of that particular object. Okay, so now let's work on the methods. So let's start with, let's see, is ethyl freezing, right? So let's create an if statement and say if. Let's create an if statement and say if is ethyl freezing. If temperature 1, if temperature 1 dot is ethyl freezing. Okay, based on the temperature in temperature 1, Let's see if it's freezing. If it's freezing, now remember that this method returns true if it's freezing and returns false if it's not. So if it's freezing, then let's go ahead and display a message. System.out.println and say that and say that ether will freeze at this temperature or something. Let's see. Yeah, let's say ethyl will freeze at this temperature. By something like that. Okay. So let's just compile this and see if we're fine. And we can try to put in something like, so ethyl over here, we can try to put in something like negative 174 and see what happens. So let's run this, put in negative 174 and hit OK, and it says ethyl will freeze at this temperature. So we can see that it's working. All right, now there's a there's a ternary operator, right? There's a ternary operator that we can use instead of, writing multiple if-else statements. It's the same thing, right? So let's try to see if we can do that. It's been a while since I actually used the ternary operator. So I think what we are testing or checking is this, right? So let's just go ahead and fix that. If temperature 1, okay, if temperature 1 but ether is freezing is equal to true. So let's go ahead and put a question mark here. We're trying to create a ternary operator. If it doesn't work, it's been a while since I used it, so if it doesn't work, we'll just switch back to the if statement. But let's just try to keep that simple. So if that's the case, then if it's true, if it returns true, then let's display ether will freeze at this temperature. Okay, and else with a colon, let's display nothing. Let me just try to see something here. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I used it, so let's compile this. Probably get an error here. Not a statement. Let's see. Probably missing something here. Not sure. Okay, now I'm even messing things up. Let's see. Let's see something here. Boolean. Let's just say I just want to see something here. Something's expected, semicolon, and incompatible types for either as a subtype or okay. I used to do this, but I've forgotten how it is. It's been a while since I used and because it would have been nice if we had just one line like that. I don't know why it's doing that, but not a statement. If it's true, then do this. If it's not, then do this. And it's not really working, but I'll refer to it and then we'll probably use it in future programs. But for now, it's been a while since I used it, so let's just leave that and then keep with our if statement like this. All right, so we can see this is working now. Let's do the same thing for the other methods, right? So if temperature 1 dot is ethyl freezing, then let's go ahead and display that. Let's just copy it and then have it for the other ones as well. A ternary operator would have been nice for this one, but like I said, I've forgotten the syntax. So I mean, I have the syntax down, but I've forgotten a few things about it. It's been a while since I used it, so I'll refresh on that and then I'll probably use it in future programs. So if temperature 1 dot is ethyl boiling, I believe is the next one. Is ethyl boiling? Then ethyl will boil at this temperature. Now there are better ways to display this, right? But this is just to test the program to make sure it's working. You can change it around based on your needs. We're trying to just solve the question, make sure it's working. All right, so the next thing is going to be is oxygen freezing and it's oxygen boiling. So if temperature 1 dot is oxygen freezing, then oxygen will freeze at this temperature. And then let's copy that. If temperature 1 dot is oxygen boiling, then oxygen will boil at this temperature. And the next one is going to be water, right? If temperature 1 dot is water freezing, then water will freeze at this temperature. And then is water boiling? It's going to be the last one. Then water will boil at this temperature. All right, so let's compile this and make sure that we're fine. And then the question over here, let's see. So the question over here said, for example, if the temperature is negative 20, the class should report that water will freeze and oxygen will boil at that temperature. Okay, so let's try negative 20 and see if it's true, if it's working. So compile this and then run. Try negative 20 and hit enter. And it says oxygen will boil at this temperature, water will freeze at this temperature. So it's correct, because it said the class should report that water will freeze, and oxygen will boil, at this temperature. So it's working. You can see that it's going through and only displaying the ones that are true. You can see that it's working. You can try a different value and see what happens. Let's see, negative 90. Oxygen is still that. All right, so let's try something else. Let's see, 200. Ethyl will boil at this temperature. Oxygen will boil at this temperature. Try something else. 10. Oxygen. Try negative 300. Okay. All right, so this program is working. If you have any questions, please comment down below and I'll do everything to respond to them. Thank you very much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time with the next program. All right then, bye-bye.